We are back with our debate for Oregon Attorney General. Our next topic will concern gun violence. And we have seen quite an increase in gun violence between the years 2020 and 22. We saw a big increase both nationally and here in Oregon. The numbers are starting to go in the other direction now, but gun violence is still a big concern on the part of people, especially if you're one of those families where it touches you personally. Start with Mr. Rayfield. What is your thought about the Attorney General's role in gun violence and dealing with it?
When I went to school, I didn't think about gun violence. My son, now who is 13, goes to school in a world where gun violence is commonplace for him. When I served in the legislature, we passed things like universal background checks. We passed ghost gun legislation to ban ghost guns, the things that are used in crimes all across the United States now. Right now, what is developing is a critical role that the Attorney General plays in defending those laws. Ballot Measure 114, which was a gun violence prevention measure, is challenged in our own courts right now, the constitutionality. As your next Attorney General, I will defend the constitutionality of those gun violence prevention laws. Nationally, what you're seeing is Republican attorneys general are doing the exact opposite. 26 Republican attorneys general are challenging President Biden's ghost gun legislation right now. You can absolutely count on me to defend gun violence legislation and to continue to use this soapbox to make our schools and our communities safer.
Mr. Lathrop, the issue of gun violence.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. You're right to say that we've seen an increase in gun violence over the last few years, but what isn't actually counted is we've seen a steady increase of gun violence for the last 10 years in Oregon. It's something we've been struggling with. We pass a lot of laws in Oregon, and we boast about the laws we pass, but we're not enforcing those laws. That's the critical issue in Oregon. We don't have a law creation problem. We have a law enforcement problem. And so the more gun bills that we've passed over the last 10 years, and we just see an increase in gun violence, means it's not working. Right now, we've taken resource officers out of schools, which have left schools vulnerable to the gun violence. The legislature has consistently stripped the tools of law enforcement to actually enforce the laws and intervene in cases where people might be about to use gun violence. I worked as a deputy district attorney, and I was required to report to scenes where there had been drive-by shootings, teen suicides, accidental deaths from guns. I know the destructive and the violent nature that guns can have and how hard they can be on families, and I want to work to enforce the law.
Recommendations from the Attorney General carry weight in the state legislature. As you consider your role as Oregon's Attorney General, do you have any specific legislative policy proposals that you plan to recommend for the 2025 legislative session? We'll start with Mr. Lathrop.
I do. I worked as a mental health court deputy in the treatment courts in Marion County. And so I have a firsthand look at the nature of mental health and mental health disorders in the state of Oregon. And we are embarrassing. It's embarrassing how we treat people with mental health in Oregon. We're almost last in the country. Our laws on civil commitment are draconian. The legislature has not allocated enough resources and enough funding for institutions. Our mental health disorder plan seems to be homelessness in the county, in the jails. We are treating people with mental illness very disrespectfully and disgracefully, and I want to propose legislation and work hard and use my background in mental health treatment courts to start providing dignity and honor to people who are suffering what is essentially a disease. It's embarrassing what's happening in Oregon right now.
Mr. Rayfield, you had a leadership position in the legislature. What's your answer to specific legislative policy proposals?
The first thing when you come into the first legislative session, and that's at the beginning of this year, you need to assess the needs within your agency first so that it can actually complete its concrete and core missions. That's the first thing you have to do, and that should be your number one priority as Attorney General. Number two, the thing that I am very interested in doing is building a working families unit, and that's additional investigators and attorneys so that we can go out into the communities to support working families by combating things like wage theft, combating things like child labor violations, misclassification of workers, and expanding that role. That's incredibly important to take care of our working families. Be an attorney general for all Oregonians. And then finally, we need to have a modernization program when local police in different cities are struggling with funding. I want to have a grant program statewide modeled after a federal program to modernize our policing practices that will get better results. And this is actually based off of a very successful stolen vehicle unit program in East Portland.
We have a number of other issues to get to, so I want to get into national issues right now. In November, our country will elect the next president of the United States, who will in turn appoint the next U.S. attorney for Oregon. How can you ensure a good working relationship with the next U.S. attorney for Oregon if your political views differ, especially on national issues such as climate change, access to abortion, gun safety, or addressing hate crimes? So, Mr. Rayfield, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I always believe that we solve our problems better when we do it together. And this was something that was born out of my parents when I was raised. My dad was a Republican, a colonel in the Air Force Reserves. My mother is currently a Green Party member. And so if you're doing the math, neither of them voted for me in the primary. They have assured for me they're going to vote for me in the fall. So that's one Republican vote Mr. Raythorpe isn't going to get. But in that context, I've taken that same approach into the legislature. I have Republicans that I've worked with in the legislature that are endorsing me for Attorney General. I brought Republicans and Democrats together using relationships to solve some of our greatest challenges. Does that mean that we're going to have disagreements or we won't have disagreements? Absolutely not. We will. But you disagree with respect. My dad and my mother often wanted the same things. My mother thought we needed less nuclear weapons. My dad thought we needed more nuclear weapons. And the reason they both believed that was because they wanted a safe place to live. Same value, different approach. Two amazing people, and I respect them both.
Mr. Lathrop.
The Attorney General position really shouldn't be a partisan position. It's a law enforcement position. And my entire background is in law enforcement. I don't have a political background. And I don't look through these issues from a political lens. I look through these issues through a lawful lens. What's legal and what's my duty and how should I enforce the law? I don't come with any political baggage. I'm not going to disagree or try to take on any administration for this political reason or for that political reason. I'm just going to enforce the law that the Oregonians passed through the democratic process. And I will say, in my last job, working to combat human trafficking in West Africa, I was very successful at bringing organizations that typically have conflict with one another together, the U.S. State Department, UNICEF, and West African governments, working together in unison in public-private partnerships to drive down the prevalence of human trafficking in West Africa. Because of that collaborative leadership that I was able to provide, thousands of children were released from what is modern-day slavery. So I will bring the same spirit of collaboration to this job because I want to get results.
State attorneys general, often join forces to sue industries such as tobacco or pharmaceutical companies on behalf of citizens. Now, in Oregon, the DOJ has been involved or initiated lawsuits against companies including Monsanto, Oracle, Google, and most recently TikTok. Do you anticipate joining in such lawsuits, and is there an issue you are already interested in pursuing at this time along those lines? And I'll start with Mr. Lathrop on this one.
Yeah, it probably depends on the lawsuit, and it probably depends on the time and place about what's in the best interest of Oregon and what law or what company is involved. But I will say that something that strikes me as alarming and concerning, and that you can count me as somebody who's going to take a very hard look at, is social media. Social media is having a very negative impact, well-cataloged negative impact on children, young children, teenagers. It's created sex coercion, it's created body image issues, it's created bullying. And I think there's a lot of money being made in social media right now, and I think it's time that states start to aggressively crack down on predatory social media advertising and start to protect our children from that.
Mr. Rayfield.
Absolutely. This is a critical and essential role for any attorney general in any state across this country. Part of your responsibility is to take care of all Oregonians. And when Oregonians have been harmed, it is your responsibility to then hold those wrongdoers accountable. The perfect example, Ken, that you mentioned was the Monsanto case, where you have forever chemicals that are in our communities. If Attorney General Rosenblum had not held their feet to the fire, we, as taxpayers, would be paying to mitigate that harm in our community. Instead, the Attorney General Rosenblum actually went after them, and they are now going to pay for the harm that is in our community. That is the type of leadership I want to bring. I want to do that by working with Republican attorneys general as well, because I think we work better together, and I think it also improves the integrity of the cases that we're bringing when we're crossing the aisle on such important litigation, which is the benefit for all Oregonians. I would agree with Mr. Lathrop. I had mentioned earlier that social media is something that is top on my radar, especially with a 13-year-old at home, and watching the detrimental impacts that that has on our kids, especially when social media and those companies know what they're doing.
Well, let's follow up on that. Stay on the issue of social media for a 30-second response there. And Mr. Rayfield, I'll let you answer this first. What specifically is it about social media that bothers you from a legal standpoint, and what can you actually do about it? 30 seconds.
First off, when you have a product, you have to warn. That is an essential part of the world. You have to warn folks about the dangers of your product. That is starting, you're seeing pressure from other attorneys general working on that side. When you are a software or a social media company, or you are online platforms with different games that are being run through, they create communities where people can come into these communities and prey on our children. There are not enough safety protocols in some of these platforms that need to be addressed to help protect our children. As you know, with a child, it is very challenging to see some of the things that are going on behind closed doors.
Okay, I have to call time on that. And Mr. Lathrop, can you dive deeper into your concerns about social media?
It's obvious that certain social media platforms are targeting children, kids under the age of 18. They're setting up a platform that they know can be coercive, a platform that can be addictive, and a platform that can lead to that studies have easily shown can lead to very negative results for children. When corporations or organizations harm children, they need to be held accountable, and they need to be regulated, and I'm going to work to regulate and to sue corporations that are harming children.
Let's talk about hate crimes. In 2020, Oregon became one of the first states to create a bias hotline directly to the State Department of Justice, which you may oversee. Originally envisioned to address bias against race, gender, and sexual orientation, calls to this hotline have skyrocketed in recent months due to anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic activity. How will you address this surge in reported offenses? And I'll start with Mr. Lathrop for this.
Well, I don't think it's just anti-Muslim or anti-Semitic. I think it's Black communities, Asian communities. There's been an explosion of hate crimes reported in the state of Oregon in the last 4 or 5 years. But if you look, the graph goes up like this for reports and like this for prosecutions, meaning the reports are going up, but nobody's getting in trouble for it. I believe the prevalence of a crime will go down if people are held accountable for committing the crime. And we're just not doing that in Oregon. What the hotline in the Department of Justice has become is a hotline to nowhere. I've talked to several people that have engaged with that hotline, and they thought they were going to get a response. They thought they would call the hotline and make a report of a crime, and the police would show up or something else would happen. What it's really been is a data collection tool. And the people that I've talked to on the ground who have suffered from hate crimes are frustrated by that process because it's misleading. They think that they're making a report that's going to cause action when all they're doing is making a report that's going to collect data. I'm going to put teeth to the reporting hotline at the Department of Justice because accountability will change hate in Oregon.
Mr. Rayfield.
Yeah, and so when we look at hate crimes in Oregon, there's no question that the prevalence of hate crimes is increasing. And then also on the hotline, there's absolutely no question that the reports coming into that hotline are also increasing. What we have done over the past couple of years, we strengthened our hate crime laws here in Oregon. We added this bias hot crime line when I was co-chair of Ways and Means in the legislature. The intent of the line was to be a non-criminal line where people could feel safe calling into this line for people that were historically marginalized with law enforcement officers and be a referral source in that space. There is a prosecutor within the Department of Justice This focuses on hate crimes. One of the things that I'm very interested in doing is coming in and looking at the actual data and talking to the people, and some of which that I have been talking to that have been referred onto resources that actually don't want to talk to law enforcement. And so there is a balance, and how do we do that in a way that respects the people that call, making sure that the hotline is adequately staffed, and then at the same time we need to reevaluate, engage communities on how we're going to re-envision our civil rights unit.
All right, thank you very much. Let's talk about elections here. Big election coming up, including the one that you are involved in. Does the Oregon Attorney General have a specific role as it relates to election security or election fraud? How will you protect Oregon's current vote-by-mail system as well as overall election integrity? And we'll start with Mr. Lathrop for that.
Well, I've spent the last year and a half campaigning for office, and I've spent the last year and a half being an ambassador for our election system, for the integrity of it, and for the importance of the mail-in balloting to allow for more participation for Oregonians across the state. It's not always been easy because our Secretary of State, who oversees the elections last year, left her office in disgrace and caused a lot of distrust in the system. And most recently, if you're watching the news, you know that the ODOT has been, the DMV office has been registering non-residents, and non-residents have been voting. But I think as a whole, we need to work in Oregon to hold anybody accountable who misuses or abuses the election process. We should have the gold standard of elections in Oregon, and we should drive towards that. And as an Attorney General, I look forward to partnering with the Secretary of State to be the best, to make sure that Oregon is the best at getting people to vote and protecting the vote.
Mr. Rayfield, election security and election fraud. How do you plan to deal with that as Attorney General?
Yeah, this is a twofold answer. The first part is enforcing our laws that are on the books. And so when someone, as we've seen these recent breaches, if someone has actually chosen to vote when they know that they should not be voting in this state, there needs to be accountability. And as those cases get referred to the Department of Justice, those are things that we will pursue through an investigation and prosecution. On the other side of that, and that goes for any election law, and that is the responsibility to be in partnership with the Secretary of State, because holding folks accountable to the laws that we have on the books is how we maintain integrity in our election systems. But the other thing that is going on right now in our community is that there are continued threats nationally to our election systems. Our prior Republican Secretary of State loved vote by mail, swore by it, but nationally we're seeing that being a big issue, and there are threats to our electoral systems. As your next Attorney General, one of the responsibilities that I will have is to defend our election systems in our courts from attacks.
When you saw what happened with DMV, you mentioned that, Mr. Lathrop, and the non-citizens who were allowed to register and a few were allowed to vote. I'd like to get your thoughts, 30 seconds, on what you thought about that and whether, as Attorney General, you would take those cases, the few cases that there are, of those people who might have voted illegally. Mr. Rayfield, you start with that.
Yeah, I was incredibly frustrated when I heard the first report. Then when the Willamette Week discovered more issues and it wasn't disclosed to us, I was frustrated even more. I supported the governor's pause on the automatic voter registration program, and I do believe that if people have chosen to vote when they knew that they should not have voted, and we'll learn that through the investigation process, those people should be held accountable.
And Mr. Lathrop.
I think it's kind of a predictable result. I think my opponent, along with other people, sponsored and voted for a series of bills that automatically registered people to vote without fully understanding exactly what that risk would be. And now we've got a compromised system, and we need to work diligently and quickly to correct that system so that people aren't discouraged and give up and say that this is all fair or it's unfair, it's rigged, and I'm not going to vote. So you can count me as somebody who's going to have zero tolerance for anybody who illegally votes. I'll hold them accountable.
Short answer to this, was the motor voter law a mistake?
Absolutely not. What you heard from my opponent here is, again, trying to score political points with misrepresenting facts. There are Republican states that passed the motor voter law that talk about this as a great thing. This was a screw up within the Department of Motor Vehicles and nothing more than that. If it's a failure here, it's a failure in Mr. Lathrop's Republican states as well.
But if I might, there's a motor voter law, so the people watching, that is where people are registered to vote when they get their driver's license. But it was what other states didn't do is they didn't combine it with automatically, with also allowing non-residents to get their driver's license. So when you put those two together, it was a pretty predictable end. It's a pretty predictable result. It's sloppy leadership. It's what we want to hear from our leaders is not excuses and how other states do it. We just want to say, hey, I messed up, was a little bit sloppy, we should have cleaned that up, and now it's led to this result, and we're going to fix it. Instead, we hear excuses, it's gaslighting, it's all okay, we did a great job, it's somebody else's fault. That's not good leadership. It's just not.
Let's talk about climate and climate change. What role will you play in helping the state address climate change? Are you prepared to go after polluters? And if so, why? And we'll start this with Mr. Rayfield.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Having a healthy and robust climate is incredibly important to me. I do believe that climate change is real, and I believe we need to take actions to reduce our carbon footprint. As Speaker of the House, I passed the first ever climate budget. We've done that now twice. It has been institutionalized in a way that we work together bipartisan to reduce our carbon footprint in this world. I'm endorsed by the leading environmental organization in this state, and I firmly believe that it is the role and responsibility of the Attorney General to hold polluters accountable in this state.
And Mr. Lathrop.
Yeah, for the last 50 years, Oregon's kind of led the country in environmental protection and natural resource, taking care for our natural resources. That started by Senator Hatfield, and it's something that leaders on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, have carried on for several decades now. I'm a sixth-generation Oregonian. I grew up in that environment. I grew up in an environment where we care for our environment, we protect our natural resources. It's in my DNA. It's who I am. So the Attorney General is a law enforcement position, not a law creation position. So it's the role of the Attorney General to enforce the regulations, enforce the law. I have a really strong background in enforcing the law, and I'm going to do a good job of it because it's really, really important.
It's time for our closing statements now. Each candidate will get 1 minute for their opening statement, their closing statement, rather. The order was decided randomly beforehand. So, Mr. Rayfield, your 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you, Ken. Again, my name is Dan Rayfield. I am the Democratic candidate for Attorney General here in Oregon. And there's three main priorities that I want to bring to this office. One is to keep our communities safe. And that means tackling the drug delivery issues in all four corners of our state. That means keeping our children safe from things like trafficking, things like internet crimes. I also believe we need to expand our work to protect seniors, consumers, and working families from things like predatory lending, fly-by-night scams, and wage theft that is prevalent in our communities right now. Finally, and it's incredibly important that we have an Attorney General that will stand up for Oregon's values. And tonight, it could not be any clearer. When it comes to reproductive rights, I will be there to defend Oregon women against a national abortion ban. My opponent won't answer the question. When it comes to our environmental laws, I will stand up to Republican attorneys general and defend them. My opponent is silent on these issues. I will be an Attorney General for all Oregonians, and thank you for listening tonight.
Mr. Lathrop, closing statement.
If you're really tired of divisive politics and radical politics in the state of Oregon or nationally, I am too. And if you're really frustrated about crime, addiction, and homelessness, and you don't understand why we're spending all this money and nothing ever gets better, I'm right with you. And if you're concerned about our children growing up in an environment of danger and dysfunction, I am too. Don't lose hope. This can get better, but it won't get better unless we elect new leadership. The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer of the state, and I'm the only one on TV right now who has law enforcement experience. Not just some, but nationally, in Oregon, and internationally. My opponent is a part-time lawyer and a full-time politician, and he has voted for every single policy that has gotten us into this mess in the first place. If you want something different, you have to vote for it. If Mr. Rayfield knew how to fix it, he would have already done it by now. I represent a wave of new leadership that's going to focus on protecting people and bringing accountability. Your safety matters to me, and I really appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you both gentlemen for participating in this debate. Very important election, and I hope we help the voters make a decision tonight.
Thank you, Ken.
Also would like to thank the City Club for partnering with us for tonight's debate. There will be more City Club debates in the future, I'm sure, before we get to November 5th. And here are some dates that you need to know. Oregon ballots started hitting mailboxes today. They'll continue to be mailed out through Friday. All the ballots must be postmarked by Election Day to be counted. Again, that is Tuesday, November 5th. Now, if you want to go back and watch or rewatch this full debate, you'll be able to find it now on KOIN.com in full. Also, you can watch previous debates in the candidates for Washington's 3rd Congressional District, and we also had a debate in Oregon's 5th Congressional District. You'll want to look those up and see those if you didn't tune in while we did them live. And KOIN 6 is the place to be on election night. CBS News will bring you live results on the presidential race. Plus, KOIN 6, your local election headquarters, will bring you live cut-ins and reports throughout the night. Join us Tuesday, November 5th, election night, right here on KOIN 6. Again, I want to thank both candidates for taking part in this very important discussion. You have a great night.